B, you are on mute, and I can't unmute you, unfortunately.
Absolutely brilliant. What a way to start the day. Too much exciting stuff to get into. We are getting into the crypto market, the NFT market, and the base meme coin / AI market. One of the only markets that is not experiencing a little bit of a pullback today. Cannot wait to get into it. Loaded up for discussion. We've got the majors pulling back, the memes pulling back, but as I said, base memes and AI tokens acting pretty strong. We'll dive into that in a bit. We've got Microstrategy buying $5.4 billion worth of Bitcoin in one day. Legendary is going to be answering a lot of curious questions that we have with a Microstrategy strategy. And then finally, Justin Sun invested $30 million into Trump's DeFi protocol, World Liberty Financial. We've also got the latest on price action in crypto and NFTs and a general market chat coming up. We've got Legendary in the co-host seat. We have special guest Rahim with us, meme coin expert, culture coin investor. Cannot wait to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, before we do, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is very, very, very risky. We don't know anything for sure, so please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out the way, Rahim, it's Tuesday. It's the 26th of November. You're back on the show for, I think, your third appearance. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm super good. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it is super exciting, especially with like all the stuff that's happening with base and like AI agents. So super awesome to be here. I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited for our conversation today.
Me too, man. It's great to have you with us. It's great that you are awake, that you are sane. I know that you've been like pulling in the all-nighters at the moment. How, just before we get into the main stuff, how's the whole experience been for you recently?
You know, I talk about this often. I feel like people need to figure out what work-life balance is for them. I like, for certain people, you work a regular 9 to 5, you take some time off, spend time with your family or whatsoever. I feel like for certain people, and especially in a place like Web3, I think this works in cycles. I feel like there are weeks and months where you can kind of like stay away from the station, from your workstation, kind of do your thing. But I think every few months there are a couple of weeks where the opportunity cost to sleep, to go out, to do anything is just too high. And I think like it's not the craziest thing where you're like, okay, you know what, like for a week or two, I'm gonna like sacrifice a bit my sleep schedule. It's probably not the most healthiest thing ever, but I feel like if you're doing it for a week or two, like no one ever changed the world by like not working hard. So, it kind of works for me.
You don't need to tell me about that twice, Rahim. Like, I think one of the things we're always talking about, and look, I get that people need a balance. I get that people can take it too far. But in the end, if you're trying to achieve something, as you said, how are you going to be more likely to achieve something? By trying harder
Yeah.
or by trying less?
Mm.
Like, I'm completely with you. Legendary, what's your take here? How are you doing? What's your response to that?
Yeah, we had the conversation before, right? You and I were talking about the cost and the toll that it's taking on our health, and the balance that needs to be kept is that you make more money than the health trade-off is, than the cost that you need to get healthy again after that. But I agree, you definitely have the phases where you need to lock in more. Personally, I can't see myself taking weeks or months off just because we're running a daily show and we're running a company on top of being utter degenerates as well. But there's definitely, for me now, this active choice to, until the inauguration, which is kind of the key date that a lot of us actually have set, to sleep 4 to 5 hours a day. I recently introduced a little 30-minute afternoon nap, and this is just the thing that I have to power through until inauguration, and then we're going to reevaluate and see if we get more sleep, less sleep, same sleep, what happens after that. But yeah, it's nothing that is impossible to achieve, in my opinion, because it's not more than a 2-month stretch at the end of the day.
Rahim, what do you think about this? Legendary with a straight face the other day after a show, I can't remember if it was on the weekend, told me that I think I said I was feeling a bit tired. He was like, yeah, just do the Ronaldo schedule or something. You know how these footballers have like very aggressive sleeping
Aggressive.
schedules now where they're like
Mm.
napping 4 times a day and they're getting like 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes and whatever.
It's not just like athletes, even like people like Nikola
In training.
Tesla, a bunch of like people, they used to sleep in intervals of like 2 hours. So people have done this before of not sleeping 8 hours. in a stretch. And that's literally, I feel like I tweeted about it, that I'm doing like the Nikola Tesla model, where I was sleeping 3 hours and 3 hours.
Basically, we're comparing ourselves with elite scientists and elite sports players.
I
This
love
is
it.
the game that we're playing. Absolutely love it. Look, I don't disagree with any of this. I'm completely up for it. And the main thing is just like, look, if you're going to try hard. That's I think the core message I'm taking away from this. But look, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Let's get into the core message of the price action and the news. As always, remember, we're showing this on screen for the people who are watching in. We're live on X video and on YouTube as well, if you want to catch us on the video stream. We have Bitcoin is down 5%. Let me refresh. Just want to check that twice. Down 6% on the refresh. That's unfortunate. 92.3K. A bit of a pullback. ETH is down 4.5% as well, back down to 3.3K. Feels like it's always there. Solana is down almost 10% to $227. On the meme coin side of things have got very, very red. I'm going to share this one on screen, Legendary, because I know you don't have this one. We have Dogecoin's down 10%, back to 38 cents. You've got Pepe down 10% as well. Bonk's down 11%, Whiff's down 5%, Popcat's down 13%, back to $1.30. That was pushed past or pushed towards $2 at one point in time. Mog's down 14, Peanuts down 14, and that's pretty much the same story across the board. Goat's also down 14. So any of the like major memes are down in that way. Maybe Chill Guy being an exception, up 5% today. But we're going to get into a little bit later how the base and AI tokens on base specifically have been showing incredible strength at the moment. But that will come in just a bit. Getting into the main headlines themselves, we have the majors pulling back and memes being read across the board. As I said, base and virtual tokens performing very well. Microstrategy have bought $5.4 billion worth of Bitcoin in one day yesterday. In their filing, they said that $5.4 billion was purchased using the proceeds of their convertible note offerings and the sale of its shares. The average price of buying was around 97.8K per Bitcoin. The company said it obtained around 55,500 Bitcoin. And then finally, in terms of the headlines, Justin Sun invested $30 million in Trump's DeFi protocol, World Liberty Financial. Remember, this was the protocol that had attempted to raise quite a lot of money, and I think they were very far short of their targets. And Justin Sun's kind of come in with $30 million worth of investment, which is good for them. Notable sales, Tyler Hobbs Fidenza sold for 30 ETH, digital art still going strong, and 2 Xcopy sales, continuing the Xcopy run, which is always strong at the moment. The Deadness sold for 17.5 ETH and Disintegration sold for 16.1 ETH. That's the main headlines and the price action. Legendary, do you want to take us into the NFT marketplace side of things to see what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at the JPEG majors. We have Bored Apes up a touch, up 0.4% over the last 24 hours. We have Pudgy Penguins, on the other hand, down a bit, down 1.3%, 11.3 ETH floor for them. We have Milady's down 4%, but still a 5.74 ETH floor, still significantly ahead. The next collection of Azuki's, which are sitting at 4.6 ETH floor, down 0.24%, so basically unchanged from over the last 24 hours. You can also see this is Hunter's old Azuki, by the way, that I'm sharing on screen, that's being sold on floor for 4.57 ETH. Whoever wants to grab that. I think we had that theory once, if like former PFPs by well-known creators should trade at a premium. This is an example that they don't. Last collection to take a look at, Doodles, checking in with them once more, down 1%, 1.97 ETH floor. So obviously corrected down from the new heights that they had reached on the McDonald's news, but still sitting at almost a 2 ETH floor, still doing pretty well.
Like it. Getting into some other news from around the space before we get into the main headlines. Rumble announced the approval to buy $20 million Bitcoin for its treasury. Obviously, they're the kind of alternative media outlet to YouTube, deciding to take this Bitcoin strategic reserve route. A lot of conversations about that in general, so interesting to note that. Movement Labs announces their tokenomics for the Movement blockchain. It will settle on ETH, and the token will be a native gas token for gas and staking. So this is an example where ETH will not be the native token for that chain. Former Binance CEO CZ comments that memes are getting weird right now and encourages on-chain app building. I thought it was always notable what CZ has to say on the market. So that's what he said, and then the market was red as a consequence. So maybe that's some link there. Multiple DeFi coins, Uni, DYDX, Maker, and Lido were all up 25% in the last week. Not a lot of attention is going towards this. We also spoke yesterday how some of the Dino coins like Polkadot, Cardano, and all of those were up like 30-40% as well, without anyone really talking about it, because no one's exposed. No crypto natives are really exposed to those anymore. But can't ignore the gains, so we're going to talk about it if they're there. On the other side, Phantom Wallet announces compatibility with Base. This is going to be part of a bigger conversation we have in a little bit. I think that's very important. And then finally, ZK Layer 2 Zirkit backed by Binance token goes live today. Went live at $650 million FDV, so maybe not as high as people would have hoped. Not the worst either. That is the Web3 Roundup to get you up to speed with everything else that's happening in the space. Legendary, before we get into the main headlines, the bigger conversations today, is there anything that's coming out of those bits of news that's interesting you? And then Rahim, I'll ask you the same thing as well.
I mean, to me, the main thing would be the Base integration of Phantom, but we will have a separate conversation on that either way, so I'm not going to talk to that. I think the DeFi coins is the other thing that I'm going to pick instead, and them being up around 25-ish% across the board. It's pretty interesting to see which bags have been coming back. We had this little run on Sandbox, on Decentraland, on some of the Metaverse tokens. Obviously, we've been having the run on Cardano and some of the quote-unquote more typical normie tokens, and it feels like we're kind of giving exposure to last cycle bags or last cycle narratives in waves. And with DeFi, it's obviously a bit of both, because you had ENA as well as Lido moving. But the interesting thing is that some of the biggest movers with Unity, DYDX, and Maker and Link are actually age-old tokens who are getting momentum. And it's interesting to see that for something like Uniswap, for example, where I would argue that the volume that they're doing is obviously still significant, but that's the swapping is one of the most basic things. And obviously you have Jupiter with Solana, and you have so many aggregators and different things, but there's still one category winner, and Uniswap, because of the history and age that they have, is what people look at and is what they are accumulating if interest is peaking for DeFi.
The one thing I'd say about that is, not specifically in opposition to anything you just said, but I think it's really important that people look at that and don't think necessarily that, oh, it's just those stupid older coins pumping because that's what they always do at this time of the cycle. Like, I think that would be the wrong way to look at it. I genuinely think that I genuinely think that this is something that people need to think about. If the next term for the US presidency is going to set an agenda for crypto, which is far more accommodating and permit these companies and protocols to do more interesting things and maybe achieve their full potential, there is a real chance that these things can perform much better, and that they've actually just been hamstrung for a huge amount of time because they're not able to switch the fee switch on. They're not able to do the other things that they want to do. So I think the repricing and a lot of that stuff will, well, at least that's what the market, I think, is trying to suggest. Like, look, we're in a significantly more politically and structurally bullish environment. We need to price that in, at least to some degree. And I think the question then, in the context of all this like financial nihilism, when people say everything's pointless and let's just go to memes, could there be a scenario in crypto where, as we move into that better working regulatory environment in the States, should memes play less of a role and people not flow to that as much because you've got legit assets that are returning capital to you or returning returns? Rahim, would love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, in that environment, I know you're a meme coin, culture coin expert. How would you think about, like, how are you rating that risk of a positive regulatory environment in the States? And then what does that do with your memes or culture coins?
I mean, I think this is something even Mando was talking about before the presidency, that he felt that a lot of altcoins and infra coins would start doing really well. because of that very thesis. And when you look at stuff like Ripple or like Chainlink that are kind of like B2B ecosystems in some way, or like kind of are supporting broader infra, I think it kind of makes sense. Like I think I vibe with that idea that I think with like regulatory clarity coming more to the US, you could see a lot more people looking at these infrastructure ecosystems. So I think, yeah, I think that makes sense. I also want to touch upon, one of the questions that everyone keeps talking about, like whenever you have Sailor buying so much Bitcoin. I read this post yesterday by Eric Balkunis, and where he's like, people keep asking that, like, like MicroStrategy is buying like 5 billion worth of Bitcoin. They did. Why isn't the price pushing across 100K? And he put out a figure where there were like some OG Bitcoin holders that sold about 128,000 worth of Bitcoin. But he was like that 90% of that pressure was actually absorbed by MicroStrategy. And I think it's interesting to see that. And it was interesting to see in the comments where a lot of people were talking about these OG people selling Bitcoin is usually the signal where everyone sells. But like this time, things are different because you have so much buy pressure coming from ETFs and MicroStrategies. I think that's kind of interesting to see. So I'm excited to hear what Legendary has to say on the whole Sailor thing.
Yeah, we'll take it in the Sailor direction in just a little bit. That is definitely interesting. I've seen a lot of people putting huge question marks against like this strategy where they're kind of leveraging up in order to buy more, and it becomes this virtuous flywheel where they just keep being able to buy more and more and more. A lot of question marks out there. Legendary is going to break that down in a bit. But Legendary, you wanted to come in one more time on the Dino coins, the utility coins. What's your final thought there?
Yeah, I'll push back on some of the things that you said. Don't disagree with the links and makers of this world, but particularly for a token like Uniswap, if the thesis were that now they can do more with potential fee switches being turned on, then surely that should play out for the things on Solana, that should play out for the Jupiters and for the Radiums. And if you look at those in comparison, for example, a Jupiter token is down 14% over the last 7 days. Radium token is down 7 or 8%. So it's still, yes, it's a bullish sentiment because of more regulatory leeway, but people are still chasing the legacy coins. They're not looking at what is generating the most volume, where's the most fees that potentially could be shared with token holders. They just know that Uniswap is the biggest name indexes that have existed. So many people still use Uniswap for everything as the default and don't give a damn about money that they're losing because there might be better trading options. So I do think if you are the person who still uses Uniswap, if you're still the person who uses MetaMask as a wallet, as we had a little pre-show discussion, you will also be the person who thinks the DeFi default buy for a DEX is Uniswap, and you won't explore other options.
Good points. I want to come back on that with just two things, which I think will be helpful. The first thing, I take a point. Radium is actually down 11%. I just want to show this chart though, because I know what Radium has done. Radium's obviously doing colossal volume on Solana. It is down 11% on the day, but this is the chart in the last 3 months. Like it's been on an absolute rip. So it was beneath, it was like $1.50 up to past $6 at one point. So, corrected just a touch here. So I don't think it's the case that Solana DeFi is not doing well, but the only thing that I would say to the broader point is, remember when we had that segment that Brett did the other day where he kind of compared DeFi, TVL, and activity. And yes, some of the volume on Solana's got big recently, but the sheer scale of the difference in numbers is crazy. So I can see how someone from the outside would look in and say, yes, Solana's got more, maybe got as much potential as ETH to do this stuff, but as things stand, the DeFi ecosystem on ETH is so many magnitudes higher that you could look in and just be like, right, Uniswap, therefore we bid that rather than Radium. I know what you mean though, because Radium's doing colossal numbers right now. So I actually do think I agree with you that would actually be mispriced still. But I can see how like the aggregate of all of the DeFi ecosystem means that the ETH stuff probably gets bid first. But I see what you mean. Any final thoughts there, Ledge?
Nothing to add to that. We have Funky with his hand up. Quickly want to go to him before we move on to the next segment of the show. Funky, welcome to the stage.
Jim, fam, yeah, you guys made most of the points I was going to discuss anyhow, but I'll just say quickly, considering we're owned by a VC and we talk to a lot of VCs, a lot of family offices, hedge funds, I think the bigger thing when you think about Uniswap, Maker, and Aave in particular is just legacy, right? When you think about the TradFi money coming outside of the big three, especially if they're interested in DeFi, those are the legacy. They're sort of the top ones for each category, right? So I feel like that's part of the reason why they've continued to do well over the last few months, because I know family offices and hedge funds and stuff are starting to accumulate some of these tokens.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you think about the value creation, maybe this works just as much for companies as it does. Like Bitcoin continues to, I don't know if this analogy works perfectly, but I'm going to say it anyway. Bitcoin continues to add value in part, not only for this reason, but in part because every single cycle that it passes through, it kind of gets harder. Like it keeps proving itself over and over again. And in that period of time, by proving itself over and over again, people get more and more confident to know that that thing's not going to go away. And I think that probably something similar must work with companies as well, right? Where you're entering a new industry and you're looking at the landscape of all of these smart contract platforms that are handling millions of dollars of transactions. And like, okay, well, who's been around the longest? Who's the most battle tested? Who's the hardest? And, Aave just got such a crazy good brand. Uniswap as well has such a fantastic brand. There's probably some value attached just to the time that they've done it. Even though that's very disruptable in the space, given that it's all smart contracts. That's my thought there. Ledge?
Very much agree with that. Look, we are half an hour in and have a lot to cover, so let's move on to the next segment.
Let's do it. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what's going on in the market. So on the majors, obviously, we've got the majors, the memes, and then the most crucial thing that's happening at the moment, this base season that is taking place, which I want to walk through. So just to start at the top, we've got the majors have pulling back in general. I'm going to just try and zoom in a touch so you can see that a bit better. So Bitcoin's obviously down 6%, ETH's down 4.5%, Solana's down 10%. So majors are down across the board, not just the majors, all those other ones that we just mentioned that have moved in the past 7 days or so are also down. Cardano, Tron, Avalanche, all down double digits actually in percentage terms. Polkadot down 12%, which had been up 50% in the last week or so. So the majors are down. The main memes are down as well. Doge is down 10, Pepe's down 9, WIF's down 5, Bonk's down 11. Mentioned it at the top of the show. That's kind of the same story for all the major memes as well. However, I wrote this post earlier today, and it's been something I've been thinking about. A lot of other people have been talking about it on the timeline. I know Legendary's been involved in this ecosystem. I've been in it for maybe a week or so as well. Saw Zeneca posting about base a lot. What I've just noticed in the midst of all of that more negative stuff across the board elsewhere, memes on base and AI adjacent stuff on base is showing incredible strength right now. So what I've written here is that memes are down, but there's some real strength in this market on base, especially with the AI crossover. AI XBT is nearing its all-time high at 81 million, and that's plus 70% in 24 hours. So in the last 24 hours, when everyone else is down, AI XBT is up 70, and that's about a 3x in the week. That's that bot that's on Twitter kind of commenting on doing various research. You can ask it questions. It will give you analysis on different protocols and things like that. You've got Clanker near an all-time high. If you're not familiar with Clanker yet, Clanker is basically like the pump fun for base. And that's up 58% in the last 24 hours and up about 8%, up about 8x in the last week. And then you've got Virtuals nearing its all-time high at 292 million. That's up 10% in the last 24 hours and up around 50% in the last week. Virtuals is that protocol where we had the founder on a couple of weeks ago to talk about. They are facilitating the creation of AI agents, and you can kind of buy into them on the platform on a kind of bonding curve, and then they go live, and then you can kind of trade that token live as well. So my thoughts on this is this. The reason why I thought it was important to get into this, and I hold those tokens for full disclosure, and some other ones that I haven't mentioned yet. But I got into this move because I thought the L2 experience is overly criticized. Like, it's very, very overly criticized at the moment. And Solana has been presented as the perfect solution because it's so cheap, it's so fast. And actually, when you use Base or when you use other L2s, like, sometimes the experience is really, really good. And Solana's experience is good, but you need these additional bots as well to be able to transact and make things faster. So it's not perfect either, and that can actually get quite expensive. There's a lot of hidden fees. But anyway, Phantom also announced Base support today, which I thought was very interesting, because when I was thinking about this yesterday or a few days ago, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the main reasons why ETH has struggled so bad is because that user experience for the onboarded user when using MetaMask is so horrific that you would just not want to use ETH. Whereas Phantom has always been a great wallet, and therefore, you think that you like Solana when actually I think there's a chance it's not that you like Solana, it's just that you like Phantom. And if Phantom is the way that you interact with Base, is the way that you interact with other L2s, I think there's a reasonable chance that people start to realize, like, I just like this wallet. And there's actually other better wallets as well. But if Phantom's the first one you got into, I think that's pretty meaningful change. My thinking then is that I wouldn't be surprised if some of the mercenary capital shifted to Base in the interim or in the next few weeks, since the only reason people really moved to Sol was because of the smoother meme coin experience. And now what you're seeing with Base is, from those protocols I just mentioned, you've got Clanker churning out meme coins, and also what's very important is that they've become profitable. They've been running to millions of dollars very, very fast. There was Blonde yesterday, which ran to, I think, 9 mil. Bug overnight went to 2 or 3 mil pretty quickly. Better wallets are now available to transact on ETH. So obviously Phantom is going to facilitate that for the people who were not on Solana before, who were not on L2s before. And also I think Base is maybe a better destination for serious AI projects. I think there's something to do with the branding. I think it's something to be adjacent to Coinbase that people might see some value in. So look, I know there's been a shift in tone for ETH recently, and ultimately it's still very, very far down compared to other things. But I feel like Base activity, if you wanted to make the bet that ETH outperformance kind of continues because it's been so down bad for a while, I feel like Base will be at the heart of that with an increased activity there. Want to hear both of your thoughts on that. Maybe let's go to Legendary first for initial comment, then Rahim, definitely want to hear from you as well.
Yeah, so many excellent points that you have been making. I think one of the most important ones is the user experience one. I think Phantom is the thing that's onboarding users more than Photon, more than Bullex, more than the trading platforms and interfaces. It's also especially true if you look at the download charts for utilities. I mean, obviously Phantom and the others are PWA, but still, with Phantom being in the top spot for utilities, so at least it was there last week for the US Apple Play Store, App Store, that is extremely, extremely strong. And as we said, people have a legacy bias. There's better solutions out there than MetaMask, and there have been better solutions out there for more than a year now. But if you're used to MetaMask, you don't want to change over. And if you change over to a new ecosystem, like people moved from ETH to Solana, the good thing was that MetaMask was not available on Solana. So you were literally forced. If MetaMask were available on Solana and people could have continued to use that, they wouldn't be happy. They wouldn't have had a different experience. And I think there's many more levels up to that on the wallet side. I'm a big proponent of other wallets other than MetaMask on ETH that can do many more things. But again, that's not the point. The point is to say people love to lock in a tool and keep using that. I think what's also helpful to some of that Base movement, especially that you mentioned virtuals, is if we take a quick look on Kaito for some analytics, and I'm sharing this on screen, showing the mind share of overall influencers over the last 7 days. So that's not only memes, that is all the influencers. You still have Ansem in the top spot with 1.15% of mind share. Number 2 is going to be Mert. And then you actually have AIXPT, which is with a 0.78% mind share, which is basically almost in tie for the second place with Mert, but even more significantly is ahead of Sailor. Michael Saylor at 0.70, the 4th largest overall influence over the last 7 days for crypto, and had the largest buy in history for BTC ever, for his company, for Microstrategy, which we'll touch on in a bit on the show. But still, this little agent, this AI XPT, is ahead. And also noteworthy that you have Cerebro in this top map as well, another AI agent. But the key takeaway definitely is that if you look at sentiment data and you see one of the 3 biggest people in crypto right now is an AI agent, and that one's trading at 40 mil, there's been a couple of people who are thinking that has to be massively underpriced. And this is why I think it's been leading the AI and AI agent virtuals pump over the last 24 hours, which also definitely helped the rest of the ecosystem plus virtuals itself. And then you have this combined effect with the Phantom wallet supporting Base now, which you had perfectly outlined before.
Yeah, good point. I didn't know. It's pretty crazy to see the AI agent that high up on the mindshare graph. I want to come back to you in a second on some more of the specific AI stuff and what you're looking at and why you think it's interesting. Rahim, coming to you first though, what do you think of this base meme coin narrative season? Is it something you're looking at? How do you think about it? What are your thoughts?
I completely resonate with your idea of Base seeming like the best infrastructure for building a lot of these AI products. I don't know if you remember, we had this conversation in Singapore because one of my biggest learnings out of Token 2049 was everyone was talking about AI over there. No one was talking about consumer crypto. And we spoke about this. And I feel like, to me, and again, I say this like from a very user point of view, I feel like Solana has this image of being this Gen Z, young people, energy chain where everyone's kind of like gambling, having fun, stuff like that. Whereas I feel like Base has like a bit more mature audience. Even the people around me, I think about, like you, Zeneca, my friend Gaurang, like even from like traders' point of view, I feel like there are more mature people that are focused on Base. And I think that's where I'm like a lot more interested in seeing how that kind of pans in people's trading abilities, all the way from AI to like memes. I actually think like one of my favorite bots is actually AIXBT because I feel like the whole analysis of like charts and stuff of like chains, I think it's freaking fundamental. You look at like some of the other stuff on Solana, like Bully and everything, I feel like to a degree, I feel like they're just like shit posters, except they are like AI, which is cool. And I know there's this whole argument of like attention economy side of things. But yeah, I completely agree with that. I also feel like there's this notion that people have that if the major is moving up, that means the chain is better. And if it's not, that means the chain is not doing well. And that's what like the sentiment around ETH has been so much about the price action, but not all the stuff that's being built. And everyone's like, Solana is a better chain just because the price is moving up, and not comparing how much of the experience is different for like different L2s. And I think because Base doesn't have that speculative asset, people on our CT are kind of confused. How do you evaluate? Is Base doing well? Is it doing bad? So you have the Coinbase stock, which is kind of like a different way of like evaluating the whole ecosystem. But I think that plays like a big role because from outside, you don't really know how do you evaluate. If you're not involved in the space, how do you evaluate whether Base ecosystem is doing well or not? Whereas price action is one of the biggest metric CT uses for any other chain. So I think that's very fascinating to see.
Yes, I like it. Lots of interesting points there. I might circle back with you as well, Rahim, when it comes to actually finding some strategies. Legendary, I said I was going to come to you on the kind of making sense of all of this, because one thing I'm very conscious of, because I literally experienced this like 7 days ago, or might have even been less, like 4 days ago. I was like, wait, what? There's all of these new sectors now on another new L2. How do you get on top of these various things? How are you making sense of it at the moment, Legendary? When you're thinking about these various investments that you've made, you've probably got agents, you've got literally AI agents, you've got maybe AI protocols. What are the other buckets? How are you thinking about it? How should people try to understand this?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think there's been a very fantastic point made by Rahim before that I never thought about. It's like attracting the different crowds of people and how they communicate across different chains. And it makes a lot of sense. I recently had shared a post by Mika, one of the content creators from the West Coast, very, very bullish on Solana and how she's been analyzing AI agents. And she was like, look, gold doesn't resonate with me. Don't see the vibe there. It's not so much on brand. I don't like the jokes. So that's very much coming from a cultural perspective, which is very important. I've always been saying, if you're building an AI agent, you need to win on two fronts. You need to build a superior product, but you also need to win on the personality front. The reason why I, for example, doubled down on my AI XPT backs yesterday, and I kind of shared this across like 4 posts on X, is I criticized the AI XPT because it got something wrong. And then it apologized to me, but it did that in such a like human-like way that I, for a moment, felt guilt-tripped. I felt bad, and I apologized back to the damn AI agent. I was like, fuck, if this thing makes me actually feel emotions, I need to buy more. And then that also kind of, the other point that Raheem made before is that you have a lot of builders on base who are going at length to expand on their AI agents and build upon them. Just sharing this on screen because Veda Research, another AI agent, and also similarly holding their token as well. So keep that in mind. They have said, look, they hired another 3 AI engineers. They're now a team of 6, 2 AI engineers, 1 AI researcher, 1 ML researcher, 1 blockchain dev. They stopped using the tooling that Virtuals, which is this infrastructure protocol that allows you to launch agents, stopped using that completely, moved on to building their own thing, which, if you think about that, AI is now the #1 trending sector and spot in the world. Hiring another 3 people, AI engineers, has to be damn expensive. And it literally becomes that question, where do you want to do that? On what chain do you want to do that? And it seems that both Solana and Base are winning at the same time. The agent that we mentioned before, AI XPT, exists primarily on Base, but its token has also been migrated to Solana, so you can buy it there. And I feel like this is becoming, going back to your question, the difficult thing to track, because you have to follow 2 ecosystems if you want to be on top of all the plays, because attention will shift from one place to another and move back. And if you have a day like yesterday where the meme side is down significantly, BTC is down significantly, and you're just solely exposed to Solana, you will basically miss a free double up on everything on Virtuals, really, that has happened. And this is the one bucket. This is the AI agent bucket. The other play is obviously to be like, look, I don't want to have any investment in the agents because I can't be bothered to track all of them. So I'm just going for the protocol token. And there's multiple tokens out there. I mean, Virtual is probably one of the more prominent, or definitely the most prominent one, also the one that has been mentioned in the Binance AI crypto research that you guys have been talking about on the show yesterday, where I wasn't on. But that's another way to like kind of look for the infrastructure play behind that. Other ways are obviously to look for the DeFi play. Does it pay off to be a liquidity provider somewhere? Is there an interesting pool that allows you to farm an airdrop? So this is still this one category. And you have the other big mimetic category, obviously, of the culture coins. That is a whole different beast to track. And I personally have reached capacity with that. Like, I kind of noticed I'm really good at trading AI coins. Whenever I buy living animals, I lose money. Dead animals work a bit better, but the living ones, it's like a complete different set of groups, people, cabals that you have to track and stay up to date with what they are talking about. And I feel like I can't do that because on the AI side, I already have to track personality, sentiment of an AI agent, but also have like at least a fundamental understanding of what's going on with the tech, as there's also cultural lore being built out there. You had this example of, what is it, Boba, the AI agent that went rogue a couple days ago on Solana, and basically one clipped its entire supply of the token, sent it from 20 to 4 mil in a single clip, and the dev had to turn it off and manually start buying that back. And then it launched another token of its own. So that was pretty fun to see that play out. And with the AI stuff, you also have that additional layer that you will have to be aware of, that there's like actual agents and there's like humans LARPing as agents. And if something like that is uncovered, obviously that would be a catastrophe for the token if it's not an AI and if it's a human. And there's always questions coming up like that. Sammy is only in the audience with us, not on stage with us today, had this post on Virtuals and talking about AI XPT. And someone was like, I talked to AI XPT on the Virtuals protocol. It's pretty shit there. why is it better on X? Is it actually a human? And turns out, because I didn't know the answer to that, and I wanted to answer that myself, that the apparently the models that you use for the agents, you can't update them on the virtual side. So this is why on the chat feature there, you get a like way worse output than talking to AI XPT on X or on its terminal, where you can use the full and most recent model. So there's so many notions to keep in mind with that I've kind of decided to stay in my AI lane and focus and flourish hopefully on that.
Interesting. So we have different buckets, which are AI agents, AI protocols, live animals, dead animals, and you're putting the dead and you're still in the dead animals game as things stand, but putting the live animals aside. Understood. That's very helpful to get that insight, Legendary. Thanks for that. Rahim, coming back to you, maybe closing off on the AI segment. We have a question actually here on YouTube from Notorious Big Bull. How is Rahim sifting through the large number of agents to identify ones that would stick around? So what are your thoughts there? And if you don't have a thought there, just how are you sifting through the crazy amounts of stuff that you're doing anyway at the moment?
I feel like, to be honest, it's too early for us to decide which is gonna like stick around, which is like the better bet. So I feel like the top ones that everyone's talking about, that I'm like kind of invested in it. I do think, you know, the Binance research paper that came out, like I was thinking about it from Coinbase perspective. If I was Coinbase, clearly Coinbase didn't do the whole meme coin listing thing because they want to do the listings of coins differently. I feel like the whole AI agent, it's like a whole utility ecosystem. If they like really want to front run Binance, I think they're so well positioned to kind of start listing their agents before Binance does. They're clearly looking into it if they're writing like research articles. So I was like yesterday night, I ended up deploying a lot more capital just with that idea. I know it's just like a random thesis, but like, yeah, I'm excited to see how like whole AI XPT thing plans out. I was looking at, Sammy also posted a tweet about how it's looking at Ronin and a couple of ecosystems as like good bets for the future. I just find that like so fascinating because there are so many data points to look at: consumer behavior, what age group, like how that kind of trades, and how they are like locking up their TVL, and yeah, just like looking at the sentiment and overall thing. So I kind of am like looking all over, but like I'm on Solana and based on the AI agent side of things. I feel like one of the ways I'm managing it is like the one thing I've completely faded is and I know Funky is gonna hate me for this, is runes and ordinals. I'm just like, to me, I'm like, it's one of those things, if I believe that rising tides lift all boats, for me to focus on that ecosystem, I would have to believe that they're going to surpass everything else, which I don't think so. And I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy to be proven wrong. But yeah, I guess that's how I'm kind of like tackling all of this.
Okay. I like it. Very, very interesting. Maybe my final point on that before we throw to Legendary for the Michael Saylor segment is I just do a lot of comparisons. When things move really quickly, it's hard to, like, relative value starts to change, right? So for example, Clanker, which is the pump fund of Base, moved really, really aggressively towards 100 million, I think overnight. And so when that happens, I feel like you can start to take a look at the lower things and think, well, these just have to move up in line with that. And on the virtuals protocol side, to answer the specific question, I kind of just go through the agents. And when I talk about this like I've been doing it for years. In the last 48 hours, this is the way that I have decided to do it. I just scroll through, because the thing is, at the moment, they're not that many. They're not that many like properly established ones. So you can just scroll through, and by the time you've scrolled through 10 or 20, you've already looked at all of the ones that are more than $1 million market cap. So you can just scroll through and think like, okay, well, click in, check their Twitter, check the communication, check the description, check if you see this sounds really good, it looks really good, but it seems undervalued compared to that one, which is 2 times more. I look at the holder count, like, does this one has 500 holders, this one has 1,000 holders, but it seems like this one is doing much better and the volume seems to be there, so maybe this is going to get repriced. So there's a couple of things that I look at practically on the virtuals protocol, which might be of interest to people. Look, we're going to stay on this topic for multiple days and weeks, or as long as necessary. But let's move it on from now, though, because I think we've done it with enough detail for here.
Let me get one sentence in, and then I'm going to move on to the Michael Saylor stuff myself.
Go for it. Just take it through.
Because Flo had mentioned it in the YouTube comments. I think Sammy talked about it too. Cookie.fun has now this AI agents index tracker tracking 127 agents with
Nice.
a market cap of 4.6 bill. Haven't had a look at it, heard it multiple times. I would definitely say this is a great resource to start exploring and understanding the agent.
That is very good. I like the look of that.
Anyhow, as you said, we have 10 minutes left in the show. Let's touch and get into the first main headline. As we said at the top of the show, MicroStrategy making the largest ever Bitcoin by adding $5 billion worth of the asset, bringing its total stash to almost $38 billion worth of Bitcoin. I think we talked quite at length about how that works, about the convertible notes, about like all of the financials. So what I want to do instead is focus more on the questions that came as a result of that. The first one, Raheem, you had mentioned already before this post by Eric Balkunas, where people are asking, how is it working? People are buying, or MicroStrategy is buying $5 billion worth of BTC, yet the chart is not moving up. We're not at 100K. You said it, I'm going to keep it short for that reason. We have another information on that basically long-term Bitcoin holders sold 128,000 BTC. The spot ETFs absorbed 90% of the selling pressure. So this is something that we are definitely seeing in this cycle that we hadn't had before. It is the ETFs kind of flattening the volatility on the large purchases, on the large sales. Typically, you would have a cycle top if whales started to sell more than 100,000 Bitcoins. That would move down the price quite aggressively. Now you have this beautiful liquidity buffer in forms of the ETFs that is managing this volatility and is kind of changing how the cycle is structured and is working out. Another point that was made by Jason from the All In podcast was him saying, so you're taking out, that was a repost to a post by Michael Saylor, you're taking out loans against your Bitcoin holdings in order to buy a lot more Bitcoin, which lowers the supply of Bitcoin, which makes Bitcoin go up, which makes the stock go up, which creates a gap between Bitcoin holdings and the corporate valuation of your company. And basically also adding to say that he doesn't have any side in the debate here, but he's trying genuinely to understand what's going on and how that could play out, but also what Saylor's strategy is on that. In a very similar vein, someone else was asking the question, saying, what is the most likely scenario where the MicroStrategy unravels? What could go wrong, basically, at the end of the bond terms if BTC is dropping below the price where it is now? And how would that play out on the market? And this is something that I kind of want to dive a bit into. So basically, we said these are 5-year bonds for the most part, which kind of is also an expectation that there's going to be another bull cycle in between that bear that probably will also happen. And at that bull cycle, BTC will be higher again than it is now. However, if we abstract away from that speculation and look more at the factual side, there's two things that exist in the company in terms of debt. More than that, Sammy would say, but the two I want to focus on is uncollateralized and collateralized debt. And depending on how these notes have been structured, there's different scenarios how that could play out. So if basically the debt is collateralized, and you would run into this scenario where the bond reaches its maturity, which means where it would have to be paid back, you would have to liquidate the BTC to pay that back if there's not enough capital liquidity in the company. The consequences, if you wouldn't do that, you could be forced to liquidate and you have little flexibility. If it's uncollateralized, basically, you still have to pay back your investors, but you have more flexibility in that and you would have more options on how to refinance that. And you couldn't be forced to do that. Obviously, there would be lawsuits, potentially restructuring if BTCs take down massively, potential bankruptcies in the play as well. But it would be completely different in terms of the market impact because you would try to do that more gradual versus actually being forced to liquidate. And you also have the part that essentially with those convertible notes at a 0% interest rate, what you're doing is you're expecting BTC to run higher. You're expecting to get a call option to buy MicroStrategy stock because this is what they are converting on. They're converting into their stock at a cheaper price in the future, where you're betting that the MicroStrategy stock price is way, way higher. We also had the conversation still as to why people would buy MicroStrategy, as this premium is getting bigger instead of buying spot BTC. I think Funky has made a couple of excellent points around that. One of my points around that was that you might not be allowed to do that for legal reasons as a fund, investment entity, family office, whatever you are. And for that reason, you just choose to buy the stock. But at the end of the day, yes, it is a massive, massive gamble. And Saylor, more than any person in the world, probably needs BTC to go up, because he's building a massive liability here with that. And if his plan doesn't pay out, depending on how all of those notes are structured, I couldn't find out the information for every single round that he used to raise BTC. This is why I went for both the uncollateralized and collateralized versions of the debt. There would be obviously different degrees of being forced to sell that BTC to be able to pay back. So this is a bit of an explanation of what's going on, and I hope that this is helpful to understand the potential risks, but also to understand why BTC didn't like straight up go to 100K based on that purchase.
Like it. Thanks very much for that explanation, Ledry. I think that's very helpful. It's definitely not necessarily straightforward. Saylor actually responded himself to Jason to say that Bitcoin represents the digital transformation of capital, and Master is accelerating this process by issuing fixed income and equity securities backed by Bitcoin. The dynamic, and so this is the more kind of leaving the door open part. The dynamic is quite interesting, but a responsible treatment of this topic requires more than 280 characters. So it requires more than 280 characters. You definitely gave it more than 280 characters there. I hope that was like a little bit more helpful to people. And then maybe it requires even a bit more to fully process and understand that. But definitely good to get that in. Rahim, any comments here? Any questions? Any thoughts? Because we might try and squeeze the final headline in, or we might give up on it, to be honest. But any thoughts here?
No, I think it's interesting of how the MicroStrategy, it just seems like it's going to be evaluated a bit more than Bitcoin, and I think that gap is going to get bigger and bigger. And it's so funny to look at it from our perspective, because I think one of the reasons it's like breaking everyone's head in the TradFi world is they're like, how can it be valued more than the Bitcoin that it holds and stuff? Whereas for us, we're like, yeah, I mean, like that's how like most of the crypto industry works. We over speculate.
Yeah, nothing has anything of value here. We just pretend it
so
has value.
It's so funny, because to me, like there's like this whole like meme aspect around it where it's actually trading at a higher price, and TradFi is just like, how this makes no sense. Like, how does this work? But yeah, I just think it's funny to observe how these two worlds have kind of combined, and like you have this meme element of people not being able to make sense out of that.
Like it. Yeah, I think that is an interesting component to it as well. Look, that is the final headline for today was just to do with Justin Sun investing $30 million in Trump's DeFi protocol. I don't know if you need to have any more information than that. We kind of touched on it at the start of the show. Trump's protocol had obviously really underwhelmed in terms of its initial raise. They'd wanted to raise a lot of money at the beginning, didn't get anywhere close to it. And Justin Sun, His Highness, has come in, founder of the Tron blockchain, very, very notable crypto founder, very rich crypto founder, has kind of come in with this $30 million investment, which is very, very notable. So that's that news. We'll see where that goes as well. That is our show for today. That is the hour. Hope you enjoyed the bit of a bigger deep dive today. We kind of went into some topics in a bit more depth. We will do that every now and again when we think it's necessary. Hope you enjoyed the show. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X. We're live on X video, and you can catch us on YouTube as well. Just a reminder, YouTube, go subscribe to our channel. We've kind of got all kinds of other content going on there. We've got shorts. We've got clips from the show that you might want to re-watch. Got everything there. So please do subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Thanks to Legendary and Rahim for co-hosting with me. We will see you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.